The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
All right, so today we're diving into a topic that's been freaking people out for ages. Scopolamine, you probably know it as devil's breath. And let's be real, separating fact from fiction on this one is why we're all here.
It's one of those things like shrouded in mystery and a lot of exaggeration, too.
Totally. So we've got, let me see, some pretty wild videos, a bit of Wikipedia to keep things accurate. The mission here is figuring out what scopolamine really is, how it works, and why it's gotten this whole scariest drug ever reputation.
You know, it's interesting how many of the stories, they're anecdotal, right? Particularly coming out of South America.
Yeah, like that whole thing in Colombia with criminals using it to turn people into zombies.
Exactly. There's this one guy, Demencia Black, he's a drug dealer, Vice interviewed. He makes it sound so easy, you know?
Yeah.
Says he can turn someone into a child he can control. Even claims he pulled off an ATM robbery just by telling the victim to empty their account.
It's insane. Straight out of a movie. And those stories are everywhere, usually tied to robbery or assault. Makes you wonder, is any of it true or is it all just urban legend?
See, that's the thing about scopolamine. Figuring out what's real and what's not, it can be really hard. But there is a reason for that geographic connection. Did you know scopolamine actually comes from nightshade plants?
Wait, belladonna. I swear I read about that in a mystery novel once. Deadly stuff.
Exactly. And those plants, super common in South America, explains why it's so prevalent in that region's, shall we say, criminal underworld.
Like a perfect storm almost. A mind-altering substance that grows naturally, readily available in an environment where people can take advantage.
You got it. And those stories we hear, even if they're exaggerated, they tap into a very real fear, the fear of losing control. There's this story of a guy in Bogota. He brings a woman home from a bar, pretty normal, right? Wakes up, entire apartment's cleaned out, gone.
See, that's what I mean. It's no way that's real.
Right. But the doorman swears he saw the guy himself helping load furniture into a van. That's the thing with scopolamine. It can cause this, extreme suggestibility. Makes you way more open to influence, less likely to question what's going on.
So even if some of those stories are difficult to prove, they're not impossible.
Exactly. And to understand why these stories, even the really out there ones, might have some truth to them, we need to look at how scopolamine actually works on the brain. Basically, it blocks a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine.
Acetylcholine, that sounds familiar. It's got something to do with memory, right?
You got it. Acetylcholine, it's a big deal for memory, learning, attention, even muscle control and other bodily functions. Now, when you mess with acetylcholine like scopolamine does, you're basically messing with the core of how a person thinks.
So it's not just memory loss. It's their brain can't process information or make decisions correctly anymore.
Exactly. And that's what makes this substance so dangerous. You mentioned earlier about criminals using it to turn people into zombies. And there's that myth about the scopolamine-soaked business card. Ever heard of that one?
Oh, yeah, the one where someone slips you a drugged business card and suddenly you're emptying your bank account for them.
Right. As scary as it sounds, it's just not how the drug works. Pharmacologically speaking, it's impossible.
So the danger's real, but some of the ways we hear about it happening are more fiction than fact.
Exactly. Got to be careful about those sensationalized stories. The reality of scopolamine is way more complicated and honestly scarier when you look at the real dangers. For instance, did you know the U.S. Overseas Security Advisory Council estimates there are about 50,000 scopolamine-related incidents every single year in South America alone?
50,000. Wow. Those are some scary statistics. Okay, so let's separate fact from fiction. If someone ingests or is exposed to scopolamine, what are the real risks? What actually happens to their body and mind?
Well, for starters, it's definitely not a fun time. We're talking hallucinations, drowsiness, dry mouth, blurred vision. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It can lead to heart problems, severe amnesia, and, get this, increased risk of dementia, especially in older people.
So devil's breath could literally steal your memories, your sense of self, and make dementia more likely. Okay, yeah, I'm starting to get why it's got that whole chilling reputation thing going on.
And honestly, we're just scratching the surface here. What we're seeing now, the street crime and the side effects, it's just one chapter in a much longer, much weirder story. And that story, it goes back thousands of years.
Okay, now that's what I call a cliffhanger. We're definitely going to have to hear more about that history. But first, let's take a quick pause. So we've got to talk about that whole history thing. Scopolamine didn't just show up one day, right? What were people doing with it, way back when?
It really makes you think, you know? One substance used in so many different ways throughout history. Like, did you know in Australia, Aboriginal communities have used this tree, the soft corkwood tree, for its medicinal properties for a long, long time. And you know what it has in it, right?
Wait, seriously, scopolamine.
You got it.
So it wasn't always seen as this dangerous, scary thing.
Not at all. Actually, using plants with scopolamine for rituals and spiritual stuff, that's pretty common across cultures. Makes you think, right? Altering your state of mind to connect with spirits or explore different dimensions.
Right, like we've been into altering our consciousness for, like, forever.
Totally.
So when did scopolamine go from ancient rituals to, like, actual medicine?
That all started in the late 1800s. That's when scopolamine was isolated, introduced to Western medicine.
So, like, real doctors in labs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. There's this German scientist, Albert Ladenburg. He was the first to isolate it. And get this, there was even talk about using it as anesthesia.
Whoa, from rituals to surgery. Someone was going to knock people out with this stuff. Did it work?
Not really, or at least not well enough. But it did spark a lot of experiments. I mean, they tried it for everything. Childbirth, gastrointestinal problems, even preventing nausea and vomiting after surgery.
Wait, nausea and vomiting? You mean like motion sickness?
Exactly.
See, get out.
And that's one of its main uses today.
That is wild. From something that could supposedly make you empty your bank account to something that helps with seasickness. We're talking about the same substance here.
One and the same.
I read somewhere that it was given to soldiers in World War II during the Normandy landings to help with seasickness.
That's right. But even before that, think about like ancient sailors. They used plants with scopolamine to deal with nausea too. Travelers have relied on it throughout history. Even today, you can find scopolamine patches that are specifically designed for motion sickness.
So this world's scariest drug actually helped our guys storm the beaches on D-Day. What a twist. But we talked about the bad side too, right? The criminal stuff, obviously. But then there's the Czech secret police.
Yeah, not exactly a shining moment in the history of scopolamine.
They use it on political prisoners, like during interrogations, to force confessions. It's like right out of a spy movie.
It just goes to show you, right? When something has the power to mess with your mind like that, it can be abused easily. And those confessions they got, probably totally unreliable, rambling, who knows. But the fact is, scopolamine makes people more suggestible. And for a government like that, that's a powerful tool.
It's kind of terrifying, you know, this idea that a drug could make you say or do anything, even if you don't want to.
Definitely raises some ethical questions, that's for sure.
It really makes you wonder what it's like to be under the influence. Like, what do people actually experience?
That's a million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, there's no easy answer.
So, trying to describe what it's like to be on scopolamine, it's like trying to, I don't know, nail Jell-O to a wall or something. Why is it so hard to explain?
Huh. That's a good way to put it. And you're right, it's really hard to get a clear picture of what it feels like to be under the influence. Like, think about LSD or psilocybin. People have these crazy hallucinations, but you can kind of see a pattern, right?
Yeah.
Scopolamine is different. It's sneakier, way more individual.
So less tripping out, more like your brain just stops working right.
Yeah.
But people have to have talked about what it's like, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, there are reports. But they're all over the place and not always reliable, which makes sense, because amnesia is a big part of this drug's whole deal.
Right, like you might not even remember being drugged, let alone whatever happened after.
Exactly.
So how do we even begin to understand it?
It's less about one specific experience and more about your brain just short-circuiting. Some people say it's like a waking dream, can't tell what's real. Others just feel totally lost, confused, like they can't think straight. You might see things, hear things, but it's different for everyone.
So everyone's experience depends on their own brain, how the drug messes with it. Is there anything people usually agree on?
The one thing that seems pretty common is this feeling of being completely disoriented. Like, imagine walking around and nothing feels real, nothing makes sense, the world is all messed up, you can't trust your own thoughts.
That sounds terrifying. Like being trapped inside your own head, but it's all wrong. No wonder this drug has such a bad reputation. And then you add in the whole suggestibility thing, where someone can tell you to do anything and you're more likely to just do it.
Exactly. And that's what makes it different from those other drugs we talked about, the ones that just make you hallucinate. It's not just that you're seeing things differently, it's that you might not be in control of your own choices anymore.
So it's not the memory loss or even the hallucinations that are the scariest part. It's that someone could use it to take advantage of you.
Exactly. That ability to manipulate someone, make them do things they'd never normally do, That's what makes scopolamine so disturbing. Makes you think about free will and consent. Really heavy stuff.
It's a creepy thought that something exists that can basically turn you into a puppet, even if it's temporary.
Definitely makes you question how much control we really have over our own minds.
For sure. Well, I think we've gone way past the headlines on this one. Devil's breath, ancient medicine, Cold War interrogations, seasickness cures, and of course the dark side of the drug trade. It's got a long and kind of messed up history. And while that business card thing might be a myth, the real danger is the ethics of it all. That's way scarier.
No doubt. It's a reminder that medicine, poison, something that can heal or something that can control you, those lines can get blurry real fast.
Devil's breath. It's been from Colombian ATMs to World War II ships to the depths of our minds. Quite a trip. We've talked about the history, how it gets used, the real effects, and the myths. But the question remains, does Devil's breath live up to the hype? We'll let you be the judge.